Today, I wanted to get a better understanding of the Tandem T-Slim X2 pump, how it works, what wearing a tubed pump is like, and how the iPhone app and customizable settings are used. So I brought on a social media friend to share her experience using the system. Welcome to the show. I'm Justin. I have type 1 diabetes, and on here I talk all things diabetes tech, news, and management with educators, tech leaders, and those thriving with diabetes and using the tech themselves. Episodes of this show release every Monday on YouTube in video and podcast platforms, and I've got videos dropping almost every day on social media and long-form videos on Fridays on YouTube. Joining me today is Mary Williams. You may know her as Mary.type1 on social media, TikTok, and Instagram. She was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes just 6 years ago at the age of 21. She's a late bloomer just like me. She uses the Tandem T-Slim X2 pump, and she teaches 5th grade. Her and I get into how she manages her type 1 diabetes during school time, how she educates her students and squashes stigma, and we dive deep into her experience using the T-Slim pump. I plan on trying out the Tandem Mobi soon, so I wanted to ask her all about how you wear a tube pump differently and what using the Tandem ecosystem was like. If you are a T-Slim user, drop your thoughts on the pump and the ecosystem in the comments on YouTube. And real quick, we have got a podcast survey. I want to hear from you. I want to hear what we can do better, what you like, what you want to see more of, what topics you want us to cover. That survey link is down in the show notes. I'd appreciate if you take it. Also, I went over to the Diabetes Connections podcast. I was on there talking about all of my gift ideas for diabetes tech and different apps I like, so you should check that out. I'll put a link to that in the show notes, as well as a sign up for our newsletter where I'm talking about the latest in diabetes technology and all of the content going up on our pages. Keep in mind that anything you hear on this podcast or content on any of my pages is not medical advice and is for educational purposes only. Always consult with a physician before making changes to your healthcare. Mary, it's so great to have you on. I've been following you for a while, so it's surreal that we actually get to talk.
Yes, I'm very excited. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So I think what's always interested me in the content you put out is, you're a teacher and you always are putting on stuff that it relates to the classroom. You're running out of insulin during lunchtime, whatever it is. And I always find it fascinating how people manage their diabetes for their job. What would you say as a teacher? How are you managing your diabetes or having to manage your diabetes? All the eyes are on you. To kind of take us into that experience.
Yeah, it's hard because with T1D, there's a level of unpredictability, and I feel like the same goes with teaching. I have my normal day-to-day routine, but every day looks a little bit different. So, I currently have the Dexcom G6, or I'm sorry, the G7 upgraded, and
Yeah.
I have the Tandem T-Slim X2, and those are huge helps in the classroom, but I feel like I always have to have a lot of backup supplies in the classroom. A lot of things come up, like you said, running out of insulin at lunchtime. It just happened to me like last week, and it was a whole scenario. So I feel like always having those backups helps because you just never know when something's going to come up. But I feel like all the technology really helps a lot because I started student teaching right after my diagnosis, and that was when I was first starting to get a Dexcom and start on an insulin pump. And so it's just kind of changed over the course of my teaching career. My diabetes management has changed and what it looks like has changed. But I think the tech that I'm on now is like the best thing for me, honestly.
Yeah, I mean the technology has come so far at this point, and even in my what I do and being on air right now, having the ability to have like a little screen right here with my live glucose reading is amazing and a lifesaver. But stuff still happens, right? We
Oh,
still
yeah.
have these low, it's not perfect. We're still carb counting and exercise can still affect our glucose levels and make it go wonky. What about those types of experiences when you're teaching?
Yeah, it's hard. I just had a moment the other week where I had bolused for lunch, and it was a higher carb lunch, which is kinda out of my norm. I try to keep it kinda lower carb and do the same thing day to day, so it's an easy bolus and I know what to expect for my blood sugar, but this
Mm.
day I had something different and a little bit higher carb, so gave myself a heavier pre-bolus, ate lunch, went on with the day as usual, and a little while later, I was rising really high and rising really fast, and I was like, "Whoa." Like, I expected a rise, but not to this extent, and so I was trying to correct, and I stayed so high for hours, and it got to the point where I was sitting in the back of my room, and I was like, I might throw up in my classroom from this high blood sugar. It felt
Wow.
so rough, and I ended up reaching down to touch my pump site. It was kind of on, like, my upper hip area, and I was like,
Mhm.
"Maybe it's leaking." So I went to feel the adhesive, and it wasn't leaking, it was just not on at all. Like, at some point in the day, it had gotten knocked off, and
Oh,
I didn't feel
wow.
it. So I had no way to know how much insulin I actually got. So I was like,
That's the
"I need."
worst part of this whole situation, right? Every time you're like,
Yes.
"All right, well, it hasn't been connected. I'm high, but like, do I even have insulin on board? And if I want a bolus for myself, like, how much do I give myself?" You know?
Right, it's like, what do I need to correct for? So,
Yeah.
I was like, I have my vial and syringes in my, bag, and I was like, I need to do, like, a manual injection because that, for me, works the quickest with correcting, and I need to do a whole site change so I can be getting my insulin. So, I picked up my classroom phone to call the front office, and I was like, "Hey, can I have someone come down to my room and just watch my class for a couple minutes? I." Now looking back, I feel like I should have used different wording, but I was just like, "I'm having a small medical emergency and I need to, like, go to the bathroom." And so I
Yeah.
think the term medical emergency freaked them out and they were like, "Oh my gosh,
I've
yes,
used
okay,
it.
hold on."
Yeah.
And I was like, I mean, it is not like a life or
Yeah.
death emergency, but still, like, I need to take care of this as soon as possible. So the woman from the office that I talked to ended up coming down to my room herself, and our, like, school security person came down to make sure I was okay. And I was like, I'm good. I'll just be in the bathroom real quick and then I'll be back. So I had all my stuff and I'm like speed walking down the hall to get to the bathroom. And I hear my name being yelled down the hall. And it's our school nurse like running after me to catch up. And she's like, "Are you okay? I heard you needed help, like, what's going on?" And I was like, "Oh, no, I'm okay. It's just I haven't been getting insulin all afternoon. My pump fell off, and I need to do an injection and change my pump." And she's like, "Okay." So she literally stood outside of the bathroom waiting for me the whole time I was in there doing all that. Well, of course, immediately started to come down once that was all
Yeah.
fixed, but then my pump didn't know I gave myself a manual injection. So it's like, again, you don't know how
Hmm.
much insulin you got, but then your pump doesn't know you gave yourself insulin outside of that. So I ended up that night when I got home, crashed so hard. It was like
Mm.
everything all of a sudden hit me, and it was a really tough low. I ended up pulling my glucagon out, and I looked at my husband, and I was like, "Here it is in case
Wow.
you need it,
What
because
a
I
day.
do not feel good." I
Yeah.
know, and I was low, like, that whole night for hours, I feel like.
Your story is the perfect example of those unexpected moments that you can't prepare for and then can just take you on a whirlwind of a day. Like, I'd say for the most part, we're able to have, or at least I have pretty good days often. But then there are these moments that like you couldn't have done anything. I mean, there's always things we could do differently, but like you didn't know, you didn't pull this pump site out. This is something that you can't control, right? All of these decisions you have to make of like, do I give myself insulin? How much? Do I need to eat low snacks from this? Whatever. Does my pump know how much? It's like, it's just like these unexpected things that you're not really fully prepared for that
Yeah.
just can ruin a day.
Yeah, it was, and it just leaves you feeling drained, like, the rest of the day, but I ended up the
Yeah.
next day at school, saw our school nurse again, and she came up and she's like, "How are you feeling after yesterday? I know that was kind of a rough one for you." And I was like, "I'm better now, hoping for a smooth, nothing unexpected kind of
Yeah.
day." But
Do you keep a supplies package at school? Do you have extras of everything sitting in the classroom?
yes, I
Okay.
keep a vial of insulin in the clinic because she's got a little fridge, so she keeps a vial for me there in case I need it, and then I have extras in my bag too. And I have tons of low snacks. I have extra Dexcoms, extra site change supplies. which actually I need to refill my sight change supplies because
Mm.
just last week too, I had another day where I had a leaky sight at lunch and I was like, wow, this is not my week with diabetes, but I used my last backup supply at work. So
What has your experience been with the kids? Kids say whatever they're thinking and oftentimes repeat things that they hear, right? What would you say are the stigmas that come out in the classroom, maybe early on before when you first get the kids in your class? What are the stigmas that you kind of hear from them about diabetes? I assume that you're open about your diabetes, right?
yeah, I teach them at the start of the year all about my diabetes. And this year is kind of special because I used to teach third grade and now I'm in fifth grade. And so my fifth graders this year, I also taught some of them in third grade. So some of them came up already knowing about my diabetes, but I always do the same lesson every year with them. And they know of diabetes when they come in, but like you said, the stigmas, they all assume it's because of sugar. Like already at 8, 10 years
Hmm.
old, they already assume, oh, if you eat too many desserts or sweets, you're going to get diabetes. And then a lot of them, their only experience is with older family members. So they know, oh, my grandma has diabetes. Oh, my, great uncle has diabetes. So they aren't really familiar with younger people per se having diabetes or even that other kids can have diabetes. And so they are super curious about it though. They love asking questions. They can go off for hours with what ifs and hypothetical situations, but they can learn a lot. I tell them all about the pancreas and how it works, and um, they are able to understand it. So,
Yeah, there are so many misconceptions, and all it takes is a quick little lesson. And it's cool that at least your students, and I'm sure others who have teachers with diabetes or somehow maybe they have a student in the class that this lesson comes up. And I hope it really comes up in all the classrooms because just having that little moment of explaining what it is, what it can help others be more better understood, but also maybe even catch people more quickly. Like I think both you and I were late bloomers. You were diagnosed when you were 21. I was diagnosed at 30, something that probably you and I didn't even think could be possible. I
yeah.
had no idea. You were diagnosed at 21. You had just, I guess, school had just ended and you were starting your career as a teacher. What was your gut reaction when you first got that diagnosis as it relates to, I guess, work and even social life, I guess?
I feel like it was kinda like my students with all the hypotheticals and the what ifs. I feel like I got my diagnosis and I sat there and I was like, "How am I supposed to be a teacher? How am I supposed to be, a wife or a mom one day?" Like, I just immediately spiraled about the future. I was like, "How is any of that gonna be
Yeah.
possible with diabetes?" I really had no idea and just went to a very dark place and mentally, like, right away. I was just kind of blindsided by all of it, and it was really hard, but I had, one of my best friends from college. She's type 1, and I had known her for the last 4 years, and so I immediately turned to her, and I was like, "What do I do? I don't know what I'm doing." My doctors didn't really give me a lot of guidance to start with. So she was a huge help, and she was involved in the diabetes online community, so I started to kinda scroll through that on Instagram and found all these people and especially other type 1 teachers on Instagram. I was searching like T1D teachers and I found a bunch that I
Wow.
reached out to and I was like, "How do you do it? How do you balance diabetes and teaching?" And they all were like, "It's totally possible. Like, you'll be okay."
Yeah, it's so cool that you used social media to learn more about not only diabetes, but about people who are teachers who have type 1 diabetes. Like that is how powerful the search engine is on social. You can get so niche. Like I'm super niche in what I do on social. So people who love technology that have type 1 diabetes, they come to me. Like there's all of these niches. And now you've been posting on social for a while now. What inspires you to continue posting?
I feel like just kind of knowing the person I was when I was diagnosed and what I
Mhm.
needed really helps because I made my account just so I could stay in touch with all these people I was finding and connecting with, but kinda keep it separate from my personal Instagram, my personal account just had this, like, side area where I could, when I'm in the space where I want to think about diabetes, talk about diabetes, I had that kind of space to go. So started it just to kind of connect with other people and learn about it. And over time, it just evolved. And then I started sharing the things I had learned. And then it got to the point where I started getting messages from people who were newly diagnosed and wanted to be a teacher or were already teaching and had just been diagnosed as an adult and were asking me about how I do it and how I balance it all. So it was kind of like that full circle moment that brought it all together. It was nice.
This episode is sponsored by Omnipod. So far this year, I've taken about 15 flights, so I know a thing or two when it comes to packing for type 1 diabetes. One thing I love about Omnipod 5 is that all the supplies come in one small convenient package. No additional packages to remember for tubing or infusion sets, which helps me travel with confidence and ease. See if you're eligible for a 10-day trial by visiting omnipod.com/diabetic. On there, you'll see full safety and risk information and trial terms. Again, that's omnipod.com/diabetic. So you were pretty fast in getting on technology after you were diagnosed, right? You got a CGM and a pump with tell us that timeline and what the
Yeah.
products were.
I was diagnosed at the end of December, and by early February, I had an insulin or no, sorry. By early February, I had a Dexcom. I started with the Dexcom G6. Got that in February, and then by May, I had the Omnipod insulin pump, which not the it was just the basic Omnipod. I forget the name of
Yeah.
that one, but
I think it's the Eros.
yes, that one. So I was quick, like less than 6 months. I
Yeah.
had both a CGM and a pump.
That was the same for me, actually. Literally that exact same timeline. Within
Really?
6 months, I got my CGM first, yeah, and then 6 months later, or like 5 or 6 months, I got my Omnipod, and I started on that same Omnipod actually.
I feel like it's hard to come by. I feel like a lot of people's doctors will make them wait a certain period of time to make sure they can control it without technology before getting on. Because I've had people reach out to me and they're like, "How did you get on it so fast?" I'm like, "I don't know. My doctor was okay with it. And maybe I just lucked out. I don't know."
Yeah, I think that there is significance to waiting for each device because there's so much to learn, right? There's learning your body and listening to your body, what a low feels like, what a high feels like, and not relying on a number to see that or to realize, oh wow, I am feeling this way. Like I think having a little time to really get used to all of this and just be detached from a number is great. Same with a pump, right? There's so much to learn about insulin on board, insulin to carb ratio, all of these things to prepare you for a day like you had at school. That you were like, okay, you were able to figure out some things, even though it wasn't the best day, it didn't turn out so well. You were still able to think critically in a way that if you didn't have a time without a pump, that you wouldn't quite be able to. So it's kind of like learning the times table before doing the Pythagorean theorem or something. Maybe,
Yeah,
I don't know.
that's
Was
true.
that good, teacher? Was that a good
That was
example?
good. That's
I
good.
pulled that up. I was pretty surprised by that just now. Um, how long was it until you decided to switch to the Tandem? Was the T-Slim X2, the pump you're on now, was that the next movement?
Yes, it was. I had Omnipod for about 2 years, I would say, and then I decided to switch to the Tandem t:slim X2, which is what I have now.
And when you got the X2, did that one have control IQ when you got it?
Yes, it did.
Okay, so you never experienced Omnipod closed loop. So I know it's not the perfect comparison, but tell me a little bit about your Omnipod experience, why you decided to move away. I guess not regarding algorithm as much because you didn't get a chance to really have that experience, but kind of form factor wise, why leave the tubeless life, which I'm loving, for something tubed?
Yeah, I feel like this is such a hot topic. I get asked all the time, especially on TikTok. People are like, "You should try Omnipod," and when they learn that I have, they're like, "Well, how dare you switch?" I'm like, "It wasn't for me." So I used it for a while, and I feel like it was the perfect first pump. having that tubeless experience and just getting used to having an automated insulin delivery system just with the Omnipod, I feel like perfect first pump. No qualms against that. So I eventually switched because over time I have very sensitive skin and the adhesive started to destroy my skin. And that was also around the same time that Dexcom changed their adhesive formula. So I started getting horrible rashes and reactions from the Dexcom adhesive.
The new adhesive for G6.
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
Yes. So horrible allergic reactions, like chemical burn level, raw skin, and then the Omnipod also started to irritate my skin. So between the 2, I feel like I had no real estate left on my body to use for sites. So I was constantly taking pump breaks and going back onto injections. I also was the worst at carrying around a PDM. I left it everywhere. I would put it in my lunchbox and I would leave work and I would forget to bring my lunchbox home and I wouldn't have my PDM at home for dinner. So I would have to do an injection. Thankfully, you still get your basal, but I couldn't bolus with it. So I would have to do injections for that. There was just a lot that was happening. I feel like I just got tired of it and I was just feeling a lot of burnout from my pump. So I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to make the switch. And I haven't looked back, haven't taken a pump
Yeah.
break. Besides, my days where it falls off or I run out of insulin and I've got those issues. There's been no other issues I have with Tandem.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Everyone's skin is so different. Like the Dexcom G7 lasts on my skin the full 10 days. Some people can't even keep it on for 2 days.
Yeah.
It-
Yeah. And then the
it-
G7 adhesive is totally fine for my skin, but the G6, no match.
okay. Yeah, they changed it. There's been 2 adhesives so far on the G7. I think I liked the first one a little bit better, but the second one works fine. It just gets a little dirty around the edges, I've noticed.
Hmm.
But they're trying to extend it to 15 days, which is interesting. They just I
Wow.
don't know if you heard, they
I
entered it
didn't.
in with the FDA to get 15-day, where I have an Instagram reel or TikTok and always something. I was like, when I chose this industry, I was like, okay, there's I'm gonna have a story to talk about once a week, and there's something almost every to the point where I can't even talk about everything all the time because there's always news breaking, which is
Always
crazy to
changes.
me. Yeah. So with Tandem, what would you say you like most about this system?
Honestly, I love Control IQ. Just having the pump automatically able to either decrease or completely suspend my insulin when I'm dropping and I'm sleeping and it's the middle of the night and I don't realize I'm dropping and it saves me from a low that I didn't know was coming. Or if I'm in the middle of teaching and like I said, I eat a lunch that I have a high and I'm in the middle of teaching science and I don't notice it, sometimes my pump it'll give me a correction or up my basal, and it brings me back down without me even realizing it happened. I just
Yeah.
love Control IQ.
What about form factor wise? For people who are using, besides adhesive, was there anything else that you like about using a system like this over a tubeless?
It's nice that you have the different infusion set options. I tried the AutoSoft sets and the True Steel sets. I kind of will sometimes go back and forth between them because I feel like the Omnipod, I would either have leaky paws or bent cannulas, and you only have one cannula option. That's it. Nothing really you can do about that. But it's nice with the Tandem, you can kinda mix and match the different infusion sets and really figure out what works best for you, and if you have a lot of scar tissue or just whatever you need, there's just so many options that helps.
Yeah. What are your favorite ways to wear the T Slim?
Most of the time, I keep it just clipped on my waistband, but there are sometimes I take it out of the case and I just stick it in my pockets and my jeans, just kinda out of the way. It really is not as in the way as it seems. I know a lot of people are
Yeah.
hesitant about the tubing and getting caught on things, but I normally just will clip it on my pants or in my pocket, and I just kinda wrap up the tubing and will tuck it in the top of my waistband, and it's out of sight, out of mind.
So I may try. I'm working on getting a Mobi to try out for like 90 days. You can basically try it for 90 days, and if you don't like it, send it back and you get your money back. So as someone like me who's never used tubes, like explain to me how you're navigating. You said that you're clipping or you're putting the tubes underneath your kind of waistband, but kind of explain all the different areas you're kind of putting the tubing as you move the pump around.
Yeah, so sometimes if I have it on my arm, I'll angle it so the tubing points kinda up in this direction, so then it just kind of wraps up my arm and then just down the side of my body, and it clips, and I still have plenty range of motion moving my arms. A lot of the times I have it just set on my stomach or my lower back, so the tubing is just real close, it doesn't have to go far, so that's, again, easy to just kinda tuck the tubing in so it's not in the way.
When you started wearing a tube pump, were you single or were you seeing someone?
I was dating my now husband.
How long into the relationship were you? And it'll make sense in a second. I'm getting this personal for a
Um,
reason.
I think it was about a year into the relationship.
So that's pretty deep into the relationship. Do you
Yeah.
think having been in this relationship for 1 year that you felt more confident going to a tubed pump that looks a little more medical, has a little more things it can get stuck on, in situations? Was that part of that decision making at all? Did that make it easier for you, or are you the type of person that's like, I'm gonna do whatever the heck I want? I mean, maybe it's somewhere in the middle.
I'm kind of like, I'm gonna do what I want with my
Yeah.
diabetes. How I manage it is what
Yeah.
works for me. But I mean, my husband is very like also at the same time, like, whatever, do what you need to do. It
Yeah.
doesn't bother me. It doesn't affect me. So whatever works for you, just do it. So it was pretty easy. It wasn't, I was just like, hey, I'm gonna upgrade to this pump. And he was like, oh, that's awesome. That looks really cool. So
How do you kind of navigate sleeping or even like sexual relations with a tubed pump?
it's pretty easy to just unclip. You can pause insulin delivery, so if you need to just unclip for those kinda intimate moments and just set it aside,
Hmm.
that's all I do really. I'm like, I'm not gonna let this, like, roll around, it's gonna be complicated, so I just completely take it off. And then sleep-wise, I try to sleep with shorts that have pockets, and I'll put it in my pocket, but 99% of the time, I feel like it just falls out of the pocket and is just rolling around in the bed with me. But it doesn't really bother me, I'm used to it at this point, so I can kinda roll over in the middle of the night, and I end up feeling it under my back, like, I roll on top of it, and I just kinda half consciously yank it out and just go back to
Yeah.
sleep. I'm like, "Whatever." And then sometimes it does go off in the middle of the night, it'll buzz different alarms, and half the time I don't hear it, and I keep sleeping, and I feel like my husband's so used to it at this point, he doesn't even notice either. There will be times I wake up and I'm like, "Oh gosh, I think this has been alerting for, like, hours, and I don't know what's going on," but neither of
Yeah,
us
I
hear
I
it.
think I've had that issue lately with my CGM with the alerts going off and not responding to them, which is kind of a problem because I don't want to be this high all night, but I'm like not noticing them anymore.
Yeah, you
It's kind
get,
of a
like,
problem.
used to it, and you're like, "Oh, whatever."
Yeah, you just kind of sleep through it. So I've been like looking at my alerts and trying to figure out how can I not have that happen anymore. What about like exercise? So specifically, well, tell me a little bit about kind of how you're wearing it during exercise, but also I want to get into what you're doing with it exercise wise, like with the algorithm. So kind of tell me, let's first start with kind of just how you're wearing it.
Normally, I'll try to wear, like, leggings or bike shorts that have pockets, like, if they have pockets on the side, it's just tuck my pump in the pocket and I'm good to go. I also have different sports bras. I know Sanita is one brand that specifically makes them for type 1 diabetics that have pockets between your shoulder blades, and so if it's clipped to my stomach or wherever, it's really easy to just take the pump and put it in the pocket. So I kinda have some crazy tubing, like, wrapping around my body, but it normally is enough space where it's not pulled really tight and stretching. It just kinda comfortably sits in the pocket and it's out of the way. Exercise mode wise, I try to start exercise mode on the pump like an hour before because it raises your target blood sugar level, I think, to 140. And so when you turn it on, it'll attempt to bring your blood sugar up to that range. If your blood sugar is a little bit lower, it'll start to suspend insulin or decrease your insulin to bring your blood sugar up. And I try to turn that on an hour before I exercise to give it time, and then I'll normally try to eat some kind of like a banana or granola bar or something just uncovered to bring my blood sugar up if I am running a little bit low, so that way it's up, I have exercise mode going, and then normally I'm pretty steady throughout a workout.
Today's episode is sponsored by T1D Exchange. You can directly make an impact on diabetes healthcare, treatments, and technology by participating in the T1D Exchange registry. It starts with a simple survey about your life with T1D, and it only takes about 15 minutes. After that, you'll have a personal portal with ongoing T1D study and survey opportunities. Plus, some of these studies even offer compensation. Signing up with the link in the show notes helps support my channel, and it allows me to continue putting out free content. You can sign up at t1dexchange.org/diabetic or click that link in today's show notes. What are the alerts like on the system?
I mean, really what you customize them to, honestly. I sometimes will turn off high alarms if I'm like, I know I'm going to be running higher than normal, especially like for a workout, or if I have like an event going on and I know I want to be higher, I'll turn off the high alarms so I don't get them. But sometimes I just leave them. And so whatever my range is set at, it'll alarm if I'm higher below that.
Well, what about the devices you're hearing the alerts from? So there's an app which we're going to get into. When you have a low, does the low alert go off on the pump and the app? Is it just one of them? How does that kind of work? Or can you customize alerts between the two?
You can customize alerts between the two, but normally both of them are going off. Like I'll get an alert that's like a control IQ low alert where it'll tell me, hey, your blood sugar is dropping and we predict you're going to go low soon. So the pump and my phone with the Tandem app will tell me. And then I get it on my watch too because it's all connected. So it's like all three are
Yeah.
like, hey, your blood sugar is dropping. You might go low. Same
And
with
how does that
once.
feel? Do you
It's
like,
a little
because,
overwhelming.
right? Three
Yeah.
devices, and then I'm assuming you don't have the G7 app because it connects directly to the pump, or do you have the
No,
G7 app?
I have the G7 app. So
Wait,
it's
do you get an alert on the G7 app, the Apple Watch, the T Slim itself, and then the T Slim
T-Connect app.
app?
Yeah.
Four different notifications with a low.
Yeah. It can be a lot with all those notifications.
What's the decision making behind having the Dexcom G7 app? Because I know the nice thing about Tandem products is that you can set up Dexcom directly in the system. Why have that separate Dexcom app if you're going to be getting all these alerts from it?
I haven't even thought about it. I just have always done it. It's a great question. I never
Yeah.
really thought about not having the G7 app.
Do you think
Never
you'll
I mean,
delete it after this, or if not, why not? Why do you want to keep it?
I'll probably keep it just to see more specific just Dexcom issues. Like if
Yeah,
I have a failed sensor or sensor fall off early, I always request the replacements through the Dexcom app. Like I go through that. I feel like
gotcha.
it's kind of nice to go through that and see. And then the Dexcom connects to the watch. So I get Tandem notifications on this, but I can't go
True.
on it to see my blood sugar on the watch. So it's nice that it has the direct to Apple Watch with the G7 app.
Very true. It sounds like if there were a world where you didn't have the G7 app, Tandem would need to come out with a few features like direct to watch Tandem, which I would love to see, and I want to get into that in a bit, and requesting replacements and stuff like that. Because then the Dexcom Clarity app, you could have that, and that has the real in-depth stuff. But yeah, wow, talk about alert fatigue. That's good for me to know going into this because I sometimes get two Dexcom G7 alerts for a low. I get like a low alert and then like a urgent low alert where I'm like, I just think I only need one low alert, like at the same time. And I've had other people tell me, yeah, I mean, it happens to a lot of people. Any tips for people considering the T Slim?
I feel like it's pretty straightforward. I'd say be patient with figuring out the tubing at first if you're new to switching and you have never had a tube pump. Like, give it some time and kind of research some different ways people wear it and place it, and maybe test out different infusion sets to really find out what works for you. But I mean, I love it. I don't think I'll go to anything else.
So have you used the bolus button?
No, I have not. I keep forgetting it exists.
Why not?
I feel like I got it, and when I did my punt training, no one really talked about it. They didn't really explain that feature. So it was just kind of something I learned on Instagram, and I feel like I saw it scrolling one day, and I was like, "Oh, that's cool," and then I just kept scrolling, and I never really looked into it, and I just forget about it until every now and then I'm reminded, and I'm like, "Oh, yeah, forgot about that."
If someone was wanted to use that feature, like when do you think that that feature could come in handy in your lifestyle if you started using it?
I feel like it would be handy, especially in, like, the classroom if I'm in the middle of teaching and I see, "Oh, my blood sugar is high, I need a little correction," just click it real quick and then go on with my day. I feel like that would probably be really beneficial. I probably should look into setting that up.
Would you consider the Mobi, the screen, the
Yeah.
tandem pump, half the size, no screen device?
Yes, I would love to switch to the Mobi. I did a little demo pod when I was at Friends for Life this past summer in Florida. I only got to wear it for, like, a day because I was flying out the next day, so I had to return it. So I only had it for, like, 8 hours, but I loved it. I loved the size, and I got to do a little demo of the app with the Mobi and just having all of the features in one app. Because right now with T-Slim, some features on the pump you can't access through the app, but with Mobi, it's all together in the app, and it was really nice, and I loved the feel of it, and so I would love to switch.
All right, now why don't you tell me a little bit about this app? What are you kind of seeing on the home screen? What can you do on it?
Yeah, so when you first open it, I feel like the main thing you see is your blood sugar is up at the top, and then you see your blood sugar graph, and you can scroll through and see kind of your whole 24 hours. And it shows your graph, your blood sugars. At the bottom, it shows anytime you bolus. If it's like a little light blue raindrop, that's where you've given yourself a bolus either for a meal or correction. And then if it's a dark blue raindrop, it's where Control IQ did like its own correction for you. It also gives you your insulin on board, your pump battery, how much insulin is in your pump, and then it gives you your past time and range from Dexcom Clarity. And then it goes through all of your kind of current status with your basal rate, your last bolus, your whole pump profile that it's running right now. And then it gives you when your Dexcom sensor was started and how long you have left in your Dexcom sensor. So it gives you a lot of information for both the pump and Dexcom. And then you have your bolus button where you can kind of give yourself it tells you your blood sugar, and it has kind of a little calculation at the bottom where it tells you if it was gonna correct, if you didn't have any insulin on board, what the correction would be. You can put in your carbs. It tells you what insulin you do have on board, so it'll subtract that and tell you how much insulin it suggests you get. And then it'll give you any notifications, like if you have any low alarms or alerts. It kinda lists them on the app, but you can't clear them through the app with Tandem. You have to go to the pump itself to clear the alarms or alerts.
And when you say clear, what does clearing it do?
So if your blood sugar is high and it gives you, like, a high alert, you can click OK, and then it might say, like, 15 minutes. If you're still high, then it'll give you another alarm or whatever settings you have it set
Okay.
on.
Okay.
Then there's a settings tab. It gives you some CGM info, just kind of like your Dexcom serial number, and again, your sensor start and end date. It had your
And can
alerts,
you set
and
up the Dexcom CGM right through the app?
you have to do it through the pump itself. You have to go
Okay.
on the pump and go to CGM and start it
Okay.
there. It has notification settings, so you can kind of disable if you want it to give you the pump alerts and CGM alerts. You can turn that on and off. I guess just leave them on and just get overwhelmed by all my notifications. Um,
What about, is there an ability to turn on your exercise modes or sleep modes, anything?
so it says like right now I'm running sleep mode just to try to keep my blood sugar lower in range. So it says on the main screen that I'm sleeping. It has like a little cloud that says sleeping, but you can't turn on or off exercise or sleep mode with the app. You have to go into the pump itself to turn that on and off, which is another thing the Mobi has different. You can do all that in the app with the Mobi, but not with
Yeah.
Tandem,
Well, because you
unfortunately.
have to, right? There's no screen on the Mobi, so they had to, and it's a whole new app. I hope that they implement things like this because it obviously it exists for the T Slim. But my thoughts are they may even start to phase out the T Slim because Yeah, it could make sense for them eventually to just,
Yeah.
move to an app-based system. Can you remind me what sleep mode does?
Sleep mode will not give you, a correction bolus. If your blood sugar is high, it'll only raise your basal because it doesn't wanna be too aggressive with corrections in case you're sleeping. It doesn't wanna give you a correction and cause a low. So it'll only up your basal to correct, and then your target blood sugar is set to a lower range.
What diabetes tech would you say that you have now, or aspect of the tech that you have today, could you have not imagined 6 years ago when you were diagnosed?
I mean, I feel like the pump technology is just incredible. I feel like everything that has come out is just they always are adding something new that just makes it a little bit easier. I feel like I love my CGM, and I feel like if I had to pick between the 2, I would pick a CGM over a pump any day, but I feel like pump technology is more impressive just with all the numbers and the calculations and everything that goes on with it. It blows my mind.
Yeah, it's incredible. Is there anything with the T Slim that you want to see on the X3, which would be their next version that they're talking about a little bit?
Um, I don't know. I mean, I would love the app, like, all integrated, which I know they have with the Mobi. It would just be so nice to have that now with the T-Slim X2, but just, like, the smaller size. I know the Mobi adhesive, the little, like, sleeve is kind of bulky, so something a little bit smaller would be nice in the future, kind of slimming it down even more, but
The podcast episode that released today is all about this pump called Kaleido. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's this
I haven't.
really pretty pump that comes in like 10 different color sets. And it's worn just like the Mobi. You can also put it in your pocket. But instead of it having this like sock that kind of it goes into, or sleeve like the Mobi, it has like an adhesive Velcro that goes underneath it and then one that goes on the skin. So you like basically Velcro it to the skin, and it's a really pretty form factor. It's only available in the Netherlands, France, and Germany right now. Just got CE mark for Europe, but definitely could be great inspiration for Mobi products because I would love to see them look a little less medical, especially in that sleeve.
Yeah, I feel like it's gonna eventually get to the point where it's like the iPhone coming out in all these different colors and combinations. I feel like
Yeah.
pumps eventually are gonna get to that point.
Yeah, I'd say I don't have Tandem, but the feature that I want to see for you and other users is, especially, it works so well with Mobi, is on your Apple Watch to have the ability to set activity or sleep feature uh, to bolus to whatever other settings from your watch, be able to see your readings like you do with Dexcom, kind of have that application on your watch, which essentially just controls the iPhone app anyway. And there's so many apps like that. And the DIY community has been using that for since 2016, basically, already
Yeah.
controlling their systems. And we even have the FDA cleared twist pump coming out that has a tag along Apple Watch. So I would hope that Tandem's working on that with their line of pumps.
Yeah, that would be great to be able to just kind of bolus or set, like you said, set a sleep mode or activity mode on just from the watch would be so easy, especially if you're working out and you forgot to turn it on and it's like, "Oh, let me just set exercise mode real quick." Like, that would be so great.
Yeah. Mary, thank you so much for coming on. This was so fun. I loved all the stories you brought into this episode. I can't wait for everyone to hear them. Yeah, it was great to have you here. If
Thank
people want to
you.
find you, where do they find you?
I am on Instagram and TikTok at mary.type1.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, well, it was great having you, and I'd love to meet up again, maybe in the
Thank you
social
so
media world, and
much.
we can do some more stuff
Yeah,
together.
I have lots more stories, so anytime.
Okay, yeah, me too. Me too. All right, thanks. What do you think of the T Slim and the Mobi, the whole Tandem ecosystem, the algorithm? Let me know in the comments on YouTube. I want to hear about it so that I know what to expect when I go over to the Mobi for those 90 days. Also, Please fill out that survey. I want to hear from you. I want to see what we can do better. I want to go into 2025 a stronger podcast, and I can't wait to bring you there with me. Don't forget to sign up for the Diabetic Roundup. It's our newsletter where I'm talking about the latest in diabetes technology news, giving my commentary on what it all means, and we've got that newsletter dropping every other week. Thanks for listening to the episode. I'm Justin, and I'll see you next week.